Notes on Blindness is a realistic portrayal of real-life events and the impact those events have on one man's life. Produced by two filmmakers, Peter Middleton and James Spiney, the synopsis provided states, after writer and theologian John Hull became completely blind in 1983, he kept an audio diary of his experience. This film is a dramatisation of those recordings. The filmmaker constructed the short documentary via implementing the self-reflexive mode. Therefore, to gain a better understanding of the content, form, and stylistic choices of this mode, a critical analysis between each is necessary. Primarily, it is required that we define the mode, content, and filmmaker's style. Mode, self-reflexive, a subgenre of documentary. Content, a dramatisation of John Hull's inevitable blindness and the events following his blindness, all captured via the audio diaries. Filmmaker's style is independent, drawing conventions from film noir to gain a depth of drama. Bill Nichols defines the self-reflexive mode as calling attention to the assumptions and conventions that govern documentary filmmaking. The mode increases awareness of the constructedness of the film's representation of reality. Furthermore, drawing attention to the conventions of the diary, biography, and visual anthropology. The self-reflexive mode of documentary is voluntary to cinematic techniques and conventions, where viewers may not be conscious of the film they are watching to be a documentary. Additionally, this is connected to John Greyson's view on documentaries that are a creative treatment of actuality. The self-reflexive mode effectively is creative treatment of realism and truthful content. Notes on Blindness conforms to conventions opposed by Bill Nichols, including lack of formal and structured conventions, loss of direct engagement with the audience, and personal assumptions and self-questioning messages. A documentary is individual and could be said to have its own distinct voice. However, while conforming to one mode, auteurs may incorporate the use of other modes to authenticate the subject and/or content. Notes on Blindness occupies conventions from the self-reflexive mode of documentary to assist in delivering John Hull's events of blindness. Notes on Blindness uses specific conventions shown among sound, mise-en-scene, lighting, and camera work to create a realistic representation that corresponds with the voiceovers of and sound of Hull. The self-reflexive mode has effectively addressed two main components in Notes on Blindness. Firstly, the documentary has an increased sense of formal abstraction, where the film lacked formal sense of interviews. However, at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, we do see a very informal interview with an actor who's representing Hull's wife. This is not in the form of a sit-down interview of questions. It's more distorted and more experimental. This could furthermore be a stylistic choice of the filmmakers. Secondly, the incorporation of filmic transparency and alienation draws attention to the realism content. The alienation, commonly found amid the mode, successfully impacts the content and the relationship the content has with the mode. This is achieved by using the actor of John Hull alienated by the environment around him visually and making this connective to the audio diaries and Hull's feelings. The audio diaries express loneliness and isolation, meaning their use of the self-reflexive mode assists the content to be expressive. The self-reflexive mode assists the truthful expression of John Hull's audio diaries, whereas realism of the content would struggle to be expressed in another mode. The content of Notes on Blindness has effect on the mode of documentary in hand and is effectively vice versa. The content is delivered via raw audio recordings of John Hull in the early 1980s. Hull shows to recount, express and reflect upon the realities of going blind. The use of the raw audio recordings of Hull impacts the documentary mode and message via the content, limiting the type of mode employed in Notes on Blindness itself. The limitation of the mode chosen allows room for dramatisation seen in Notes on Blindness. The delivery of the truthful content is only done through this mode of documentary. The content is the root of the relationship with the documentary. The use of audio diaries is a unique way to gain content for filmmakers and drives the documentary itself. The content of Notes on Blindness could be said to be directing the documentary in the most realistic portrayal of a man's blindness. The content is 30 years old, raw and untouched, and completely authentic to John Hull. Thus, the content is self-derived by the subject and has zero influence on by the filmmaker, due to the difference in time of content creation and when the filmmakers actually obtained this content. The impact of the filmmakers on the subject by, say, interviews would not allow for the dramatization of events that's among the content and audio diaries. The content is influencing the filmmaker's choice in mode then, and the visual style, thus overall affects the outcome of the documentary and the content is expressed. The unique use of raw, unaffected verbal content, the documentary would not be steered in the direction of expressing realism and a dramatized sense. The filmmaker's style on the content. Truth is always the receding goal of a documentary, according to Williams. While truth is a goal of a filmmaker, it is responsible for them to portray this through their stylistic choices. This is how the filmmaker decides upon the mode of documentary, mise-en-scene, formal or informal aspects, cinematography and acting. Notes on Blindness visually employs a combination of the drama genre and independent style with elements of film noir lighting. Middleton and Spinelli have opted to produce a dramatisation of John Hull's audio diaries, meaning their style of filmmaking needed to reflect the content and reflect the 1980s era, which was successfully achieved among the screenshots seen on the slide here. Middleton and Spiney made two vital stylistic choices. One being the mode to express the content, and two, how they create a visually realistic environment to express the content. This shows to link together and is ideally the way the documentary comes together. The choice in the mode shows the filmmakers opted to create a hybrid between realistic portrayal and a dramatisation of each event. A convention that the self-reflexive mode of documentary employs and allows the filmmakers to complete. The filmmakers have styled the visual element of the scenes to reenact the audio diaries and employed actors to convey Hull's family. The audio diaries are used as a voice of God or voice-over narration, meaning there was no room for the actors to manipulate or influence the content, showing that this style choice was effective in keeping authentic content. The mise-en-scene, specifically the lighting, costume, and decor, reflected the 1980s era successfully. They approached the mise-en-scene in an independent style and used low contrast lighting and points to increase emotion. Many of the actors and objects in the film appear distorted in an aim to show the blindness, show it visually and show how a man would see blindness. As you can see in the screenshots of the slides, the stylistic choices aim to show the blindness visually and aims at representing what Hull would be perceiving his reality. The ability to address this content is a self-reflexive mode and stylistic choice is the outcome of a unique film. The filmmakers execute the goal of truthful content primarily through the use of the voiceover recordings, however then implementing their own visual style to it to reflect the audio recordings. In conclusion, Notes on Blindness is evidently a self-reflexive mode of documentary, where the relationship between mode, content and style it creates the most visually realistic portrayal of a man, John Hull, blindness and could only be expressed through this mode of documentary. Firstly, the mode affects the content in the way the filmmaker has decided on the other mode. The execution of realism of this narrative would not be successful. Secondly, the content has influence on the documentary itself via directing the documentary in the way of a realistic portrayal. And thirdly, the filmmaker's independent style evidently has shielded the rawness of content and could only be incorporated with an independent visual style to deliver this content. Thank you.